Hi, this is a 3-part series about wacky rock star hijinks. It's pretty cool. We're about to talk about Iggy Pop taking a dump live on stage. You don't have to watch the first 2 parts to get it, but here's the cards for them, and enjoy. Iggy Pop is the man credited for inventing the stage dive, which, if you think about it, really just means that he was the first person to dive off of a stage. He didn't know those people were gonna catch him, and he did not care. They probably didn't. He probably died. Iggy Pop probably died. See, here he is, just straight up not being caught. And that's understandable. I can see why anyone in their right mind, which, to be fair, does not include anybody at an Iggy Pop concert, would not want to catch this guy. Even before he was a leathery, yet oddly jacked elderly lizard person, Iggy Pop was still fucking disgusting. This guy would do everything on stage. Everything. I mean everything. He'd piss himself, he'd shit himself, he'd cut himself, he'd throw up on himself. Every single fluid a body is capable of producing, Iggy Pop excreted on stage. I'm pretty sure he had an anal miscarriage one time and hucked the placenta out into the crowd. And oh yeah, he threw all of it at the crowd too. Piss, blood, shit. Placenta. If you were at a Stooges show in the 70s, you could bet your sweet bippy that you were in for a front row seat to the biohazard splash zone, and you just better hope that you remembered to put on your full body condom that day, because I gotta say, just a feeling, I don't think Iggy Pop kept it clean for Jesus, okay? That seems like a foolproof way to catch a musical STD. Let me tell you a little tale here. Let me spin you a yarn. And this is a true story. It's 1973. You're a pimple-faced teen with a go fuck yourself, it's not a phase mom attitude, and you are center stage, smack dab in front of what's about to be a musical abomination. I mean, a crime against God. I mean, an Iggy Pop performance. Cut to 10 minutes later, where now Iggy Pop, wearing nothing but a bikini, cuts himself, takes a shit behind one of the amplifiers, picks it up, throws it out into the crowd, and then stage dives. And now ask yourself, are you catching this motherfucker? Because if you catch him, you're probably also catching herpes, AIDS, hepatitis, syphilis, super AIDS, Asperger's, gonorrhea, hepatitis again, ringworm, pinworm, an ear infection, a crick in the neck, pink eye.
Is that all?
No!
I have Ebola.
Despite the many gargantuanly gross guffaws Iggy found himself in, my favorite story takes place in 1977 at a dive bar in Warren, Michigan. Iggy was on stage performing when he started being heckled by a biker gang, to which he responded by performing a 45-minute long version of Louie Louie with improvised lyrics that insulted each of the bikers before he got off stage, challenged them all to a fight, and immediately lost. I enjoy that one quite a bit. So you may be thinking to yourself, that all sounds pretty gross. Surely that's about as bad as it can get, right? There can't be any human being more disgusting than that. God would not allow a creature so unholy to escape the fiery, cavernous bowels of Satan's rectum, would he? I'm actually going to start this section off with a content warning, which is not something I do lightly, okay? I do not give a fuck, but this guy is something else. It's gonna be kind of similar to the stuff we talked about with Iggy Pop, just worse. So if you're the kind of person who's pretty sensitive about blood and gross shit in general, just go ahead and skip to this timestamp. And if not, let's have some fun, boys. We got the big boys now. We're down to the big boys, the big boy pants. Born in 1956, G.G. Allen, pictured here sensually staring into your soul, was originally named Jesus Christ Allen. As in, Jesus Christ, Allen, you're fucking disgusting. What kind of God would allow you to exist? Apparently that God was G.G. Allen himself, because when he was born, his father chose the name Jesus Christ Allen because he was convinced that his son was, in fact, literally God. Which, of course, we all know isn't true, okay? It's very common knowledge that the second coming of Christ is actually famed Hollywood anti-Semite Mel Gibson. Praise him, he walks among us. But despite this indisputable fact, Allen's father was still absolutely convinced that his son was the Messiah. Which is funny to me because G.G. Allen has an older brother, which means when his first child was born, Allen's father picked it up, took a good look at it, gave it a physical, maybe a prostate exam, and was like, nope, normal human baby, not the son of God. Try again, honey. The family resided in a luxurious New Hampshire-based log cabin with fabulous amenities including, but not limited to, no running water, no electricity, and absolutely no hope of escape. And Alan's father had some pretty fun hobbies, his favorite of which was digging shallow graves in the family basement and threatening to fill them with the dead bodies of his wife and 2 children before taking his own life. And that's so sweet of him, you know, taking the time to take care of his wife and kids before himself. You know, a real stand-up guy, a real family guy. While his dad was clearly an unhinged religious lunatic who Alan did his best to avoid, he did have a much closer relationship with his older brother. The two shared a very strong bond and would even routinely jerk each other off. Oh, God. I told you about this guy, man. It's coming. They really did. They really did do that. Oh boy. Alan's brother, who was surprisingly open about the fact that he and Gigi would choke each other's respective chickens, reported that these sin sessions were Alan's only sexual experience throughout high school and that he was, quote, heavily into masturbation. Which I think is pretty obvious. You don't really get to jerking off your brother unless you're pretty high into that hobby. You're pretty pro-level jerker, World of Warcraft tier masturbator. This trait would continue well into Alan's adulthood, with Gigi not really being too interested in traditional sex and instead preferring to obtain a bottle of his partner's urine and to drink it while masturbating into their panties. Or alternatively, just to have them piss directly into his mouth while he did that. And I respect that, you know, you gotta get it from the source. It's healthier that way. Ask Whole Foods. Gigi's first in a very long line of drug experiences was also initiated by his brother when he slipped some acid into an unwitting Gigi's plate of French fries one afternoon. I personally can't imagine waking up to my father screaming about how he is going to murder me and the rest of my family before taking a little trip to McDonald's only to trip my goddamn balls off after having never done drugs before, only to go home and engage in some mutual reach-arounds with my brother. But I guess that was just a regular Tuesday for this guy. As Gigi Allen got older and entered into his musical career, he played with many critically acclaimed groups such as Malpractice, The Jabbers, The Scumfucks, The Cedar Street Sluts, The Texas Nazis, Gigi Allen and the AIDS Brigade, and the Murder Junkies. And while in those bands, he released several industry-revered albums with titles such as You'll Never Tame Me, Brutality and Bloodshed for All, Beautiful Afterbirth, Fucked and Framed, Freaks, Faggots, Drunks, and Junkies, Expose Yourself to Kids, that one's a good one, Sing Along Love Songs, and everybody's favorite, Eat My Fuck. I, for one, will not be eating your fuck, good sir, but thank you for offering, you're too kind. To get an idea of the type of performance you could expect from Gigi Allen, shown here covered in what could either be blood or shit, but is most likely a mixture of both, let's let his friend and fellow musician Bloody Mess recount the story of the first time Gigi shat on stage. I was with him when he bought the X-Lax. Unfortunately, he ate it hours before the show, so he constantly had to hold it in or he would have shit before he got on stage. After he shit on stage, complete chaos broke out in the hall. All of the old men in charge of the hall went fucking nuts. Hundreds of confused punk kids were flipping out, running out the door because the smell was incredible. I feel like incredible is an interesting adjective to choose for that, but I've said it once, I'll say it again. Go off, girl boss. Live your truth. From that early point in his career forward, Gigi would prolifically shit his pants on stage, throw his own shit at the crowd, pee on people, threaten to take his own life on stage, you know, the usual stuff. One particular performance that stands out to me is one that he put on at a New York university, where he got on stage and started playing, promptly shit himself, called the students several racial slurs, threw chairs out into the crowd, and then pulled out a banana that he had preloaded in his pocket and shoved it up his own ass. Gotta get your potassium somehow. But it can't get any worse than that, right? Bro, you gotta stop asking stupid questions already, seriously. In addition to flinging his shit and filling his pants with it, Gigi would also regularly smear it all over his own body, as well as eat it with his mouth. He put shit in his mouth and he ate it. Gotta get your potassium somehow. We sure have come a long way in this saga from the M&M's bit. You remember that? When you still had your innocence and your decency?
Nobody wants to eat me! I'm the luckiest!
Obviously, because he would fling feces at his audience and legitimately assault people while he was performing, Gigi was no stranger to the law and was reportedly arrested 52 times over the course of his career. Contrast to me, who has only been arrested once after I shit on the floor of that Target. While researching his childhood, I found myself asking, how did this guy not turn into a serial killer? These are like perfect serial killer growing conditions. The soil is fertile, the pH is just right, but that particular sociopathic flower just did not sprout. Well, pretty immediately after reading that, I found out that, predictably, Gigi was absolutely obsessed with serial killers and even visited John Wayne Gacy in jail before he was executed. And while he was there, Gacy actually painted a portrait of Gigi, which I'm sure he fanboyed out about real hard. Oh my god, Gacy is painting my portrait. Holy shit, I am so wet. Okay, don't seem weird, Gigi. You're the son of God. You can handle this. This portrait was later used as the cover for the soundtrack to a documentary about how batshit insane Gigi was, entitled Hated: Gigi Allen and the Murder Junkies. To flip the script here, Gigi actually also got a very special visitor while he himself was in jail. Who could it be? I don't know, I'll let you guess, okay? He has terrible stomach problems, and he loves heroin. That's right, you got it, it's the Cookie Monster. Okay, you know it's not him, it was Kurt Cobain, who apparently also had a shit kink. Small world. Kurt once tagged along with the band The Flaming Lips while they went to go visit Alan in jail. After Gigi died, Kurt said remorsefully that he never did go to one of Alan's shows because he was, quote, too scared. Which I get. You know, Kurt had enough problems. Getting eye syphilis from a chunk of undigested corn lodged in a warm turd freshly flung from the bleeding anus of the second coming of Jesus Christ did not have to be one of them. Although that does kinda sound like something he might enjoy. Take that as a lesson, kids. Face your fears, live your dreams, don't let anything hold you back. On his first tour following a prison release from a 3-year sentence given to Gigi after he slashed a woman with a knife in concert, Alan performed what would end up being his final show at a little venue in Manhattan called The Gas Station. It was a quaint little spot that had been turned into a punk club after years of operating as something else. Can you guess what it was? Can you guess what it used to be? Well, it was actually the original site of the top-secret United States nuclear development program known as the Manhattan Project. No, it was a gas station. It used to be a gas station. But it might as well have been where the government did MK Ultra, because this show was a trip. Located in the scenic slums of Alphabet City, New York, the crowd at this show was mostly composed of junkies and other general low-life riffraff. And today, Alphabet City is just like any other gentrified part of New York City. It's just littered with overpriced vintage stores and bullshit woke eateries where you pay $30 for a panini, but at this time, this was not the same New York City that we know and hate today. I mean, it was bad. When people say they up in the streets, these are the streets that they are referring to. That is, if you can even see the streets under the rubble of buildings that were demolished 20 years ago and the blanket of knotted out hobos. Brief detour, I saw this sign in Manhattan a couple of years ago that said, "The true New Yorker knows that people living anywhere else must be, in some sense, kidding themselves." I saw that and then threw up on another pile of throw up that a homeless person was using as a pillow on a bench specifically designed to give him back pain so that he won't sleep there. You look me in the eye while you're paying $6,000 for your second-story studio apartment and eating your $30 panini and tell me that I'm kidding myself, bro. Fuck you. That sign made me so pissed off. Any fucking hoozle. Let's go back to Gigi's last show in Alphabet City. After his release from prison, Alan's shows had apparently become somehow even more violent and grotesque. Fresh out of jail and angry at the man, Alan looked out and saw a crowd only slightly more respectable than a group of Limp Bizkit fans and decided, meh, no one will care if I brutally assault these people. So, 5 minutes into the show, he started to brutally assault those people. He clocked several people in the face with his microphone hard enough to draw blood, knocked out a cameraman with his own camera, and then started the second song in the lineup. In the middle of what must have been a sultry and emotional love ballad, Alan began a fan-favorite move when he pulled down his pants, shit on the stage, smeared it all over his body, and then on an unsuspecting woman in the audience. After the sound guy pulled the plug on the performance before the song was over, Gigi sprinted off stage and hurled himself into a pair of French doors, smashing straight through the glass and wood into the backyard of the venue. This then started a riot, with the crowd running outside to catch Gigi and confused bouncers beating the concert-goers still trapped inside with socks full of metal and rocks. Covered in blood from the door and shit from his own anus, 36-year-old Gigi Allen stole the miniskirt off of his 17-year-old girlfriend and ran through the streets of Manhattan as the crowd chased him down down into the night. After escaping the angry mob, Gigi met up with a friend, and after scoring some heroin, the pair went to go stay at the apartment of a man by the name of Johnny Puke. Quick aside, all the articles I read about this just said Gigi went to spend the night at Johnny Puke's apartment. Like I'm just supposed to already know who Johnny Puke is. I mean, the guy isn't Jesus Christ or Ronald McDonald or some shit. I think some introduction is in order before you just start hurling names like Johnny Puke at me, Wikipedia. It's like they expect me to be like, oh yeah, Johnny Puke. My grandma used to love that guy. I wonder if Gigi ever met his friends, Simon Shit and Tony Pisshole. So Gigi's hanging out at world-famous, internationally recognized figure Johnny Puke's apartment, where, dressed in a dog collar and his girlfriend's blood and shit-stained miniskirt, he snorted 3 bags of heroin and then nodded out onto a laundry bag on the floor. I've said it before, I'll say it again, who among us hasn't been there? Typical Tuesday for this guy, right? Am I right? Yeah, here, up top. Okay. So Johnny Puke and the rest of the gang leave him there until the morning, where they discover him cold, purple, and bleeding from the mouth. Guy looked like he just got back from a very bad trip to the Wonka factory. Mr. Puke found him lying in the same spot that he was the night before, and then he and the girls that were staying there posed for Polaroids with Gigi's corpse before realizing that he was just straight up dead and calling an ambulance. Gigi did not end up making it, though. The 3 entire bags of heroin ended up winning that particular fight. And that's it. That's how it ends. No one's crazier than that. No shot in hell. I mean, there could not possibly be a single human being living or dead who was crazier than this man. How could one make a video about the unhinged insanity of rock stars without including the Prince of Darkness himself? I mean, if Steve Harvey asks you who the craziest rock star of all time is, survey says it's Ozzy Osbourne 10 out of 10 times, okay? And we can family feud about that all you want, but it's just the truth, okay? Don't fight it. Don't fight it. I mean, we are talking about a man who took acid every single day for an entire year to, quote, see what would happen. And I think we can see what happened.
Someone has been in my room and taken my beers away from my room.
I don't think so, darling. Who would do that?
As previously mentioned, I live in Texas, home of Sandy Cheeks and the abortion ban. No relation. And people say that Ozzy Osbourne pissed on the Alamo, but I am here to say that that is actually not true, okay? He is not that disrespectful. He just pissed on the 60-foot statue commemorating the soldiers who died at the Alamo, while in his wife's dress, as depicted here in an art installation titled Fountain/Ozzy Visits the Alamo. It is a wax statue set up with a motion detector set to piss on the wall whenever somebody walks by. And man, I really wish somebody would finally make a wax statue commemorating the time I shit on the floor of that Target. Later that night, after starting a riot at one of his shows, Ozzy told a reporter that he had achieved a lifetime goal. He stated, "I pissed on the Alamo, and the White House is next." He was then promptly banned from the city of San Antonio for 10 years. Speaking of piss, show of hands, who has seen that movie on Netflix, The Dirt? Put your fucking hand down. I can't see you, you idiot. What are you doing? Get a job. The movie chronicles the misadventures of the band Motley Crue, and if you've seen it, I think you know the story that I'm about to tell. Nikki Sixx of Motley Crue recounts that on the band's first tour, they were lounging poolside at a hotel when a very clearly intoxicated Ozzy Osbourne walked up to them. He tells them, "Give me a straw, I fancy a bump." The band then informs Ozzy that, regrettably, they are all out of cocaine, to which Ozzy repeats again louder, "Give me a straw, I fancy a bump." They fork over the straw, and Ozzy proceeds to take it, insert it into his nose, swoop down to the ground, and snort a line of fire ants that was walking by. He then makes a comment about how everyone has a drink and he doesn't, and remedies that situation by whipping out his wicked wee-wee and whizzing in front of the shocked poolgoers, then getting down on all fours and licking up his own piss from the ground. A lot of piss. A lot of piss and shit in this episode. Nikki Sixx, feeling, jealous, I guess, also whips out his dick and pees poolside. But as he bends down to lick it up, Ozzy shoves him out of the way, lunges towards Nikki's piss puddle faster than Kevin Spacey chases down a preteen, and adds Nikki's urine to the small piss collection he is now forming in his belly. This tale all comes direct from Motley Crue, because, like most of these stories, Ozzy has no recollection of the event. Someone else who would end up having no recollection of events was a priest who once visited the Osbournes' estate in the English countryside. A few days earlier, Ozzy had baked a cake.
Mamma mia!
And told his wife, "Don't let anybody eat this fucking cake. It will be bad." A bit of an ominous warning there, but to be fair, I would be scared to be in the same room with a chair that Ozzy Osbourne might have looked at once in 1982, let alone to eat his baked goods. After Ozzy warned his wife about the dangers of this pernicious pastry, he headed out to the pub. He returned from the pub, quote, a few days later, to find his wife chatting with a priest who was enjoying a cup of tea along with a big fat slice of Ozzy cake. The priest soon started feeling pretty unholy, and after stumbling his way into the kitchen, he promptly blacked out and fell to the floor. Understandably freaking out, Ozzy decided that the best course of action was to get the priest's unconscious body out of his house as quickly as possible. The only issue with that is the priest had driven to the Osbournes' house, so in order to cover his tracks, Ozzy was going to have to take his car with him too. Ozzy was hesitant about this because he didn't have a driver's license, and apparently a ticket for that was more concerning than being pulled over in a stolen car with an unconscious priest drooling in the back seat, but he decided it was worth the risk. Ozzy actually failed his driver's test 18 different times before finally receiving his license on his 19th try in 2009 at the age of 61. And I didn't even know they let you try that many times. I figure if you get to like 15, they're like, okay, buddy, I don't know what else to do for you here. You should not be on the road. If you get it, it's a fluke. Little Ozzy fact for you there. Back to the priest being knocked out on the kitchen floor. Ozzy drags the priest outside by his hair and then throws him into the backseat of his own car. He then drives the priest back to his house, dumps the body in front of his front door, and walks home. Don't ask me how he knew where the priest lived. Don't you dare ask me that. I have no goddamn idea. As you've probably guessed by now, there were drugs in the cake. I guess a better way of phrasing that would be that there was cake in the drugs. The thing was probably about 60% drugs, 40% cake. That's a secret Osbourne family recipe right there. Ozzy had dumped enough pure Afghan hash in that cake to get an Ozzy Osbourne high, which is roughly the same amount that it would take to give the entire Indian subcontinent a buzz for a calendar year. He worried that he might have killed the priest for about 2 weeks until he saw him at a pub where he told Ozzy that he must have caught a bad flu recently because he had hallucinated for 3 days straight. Like I said, enough hash to get an Ozzy Osbourne high. Okay? It's enough to make a priest hallucinate for 3 days. The priest had originally come to the house to ask the Osbournes to join the Church of England and invite them to confess their sins. Ozzy said about that his list was so long that if he had started confessing his sins then, he'd probably still be there today. One of the reasons that Ozzy is still anywhere today, scientists hypothesize, is that he is literally a genetic mutant. Despite his 73 years of treating his health like it was a Puerto Rican junkie who owed him money, and the time that a literal airplane crashed into his tour bus, Ozzy Osbourne is miraculously still alive. I hope. At the time of making his video. It'd be very awkward if he's not, but I'm still putting it out. Fucker's even still got a full, beautiful head of hair, a piece of shit. Look at this. Look at that. I am 21 years old. That is diffuse thinning. Ozzy once said about his time spent in the late 70s, "I was on booze, coke, heroin, acid, and quaaludes to glue, cough syrup, rohypnol, Monopin, Vicodin. On more than a few occasions, I was on all of those at the same time." He then said that he somehow increased his use during the 80s, probably particularly of the coke. During his time on his reality show, The Osbournes, a show that started when he was 53 years old, mind you, Ozzy's daily intake included cocaine for breakfast, 4 bottles of cognac throughout the day, 25 Vicodin pills, and a random amount of the other 43 prescription medications that he was taking on a daily basis. I'm not fucking around here, people. This is not a drill. That should not be possible. That is highly abnormal. At one point, Ozzy's immune system was so weakened from all the drugs and alcohol that he falsely tested positive for HIV.
Full-blown AIDS.
Just think about that. That's fucking crazy. This lab-grade test could not differentiate Tom Hanks in Philadelphia from Ozzy Osbourne's normal state of existence. And yet, he lives on. Absolute fucking mad lad. In 2010, scientists pioneering the field of genome research wanted to sequence the DNA of somebody truly spectacular. Did they choose Dwayne Johnson, Stephen Hawking, Bill Nye the Science Guy? No. No, they did not. They chose Ozzy Osbourne because he is a literal freak of nature. They discovered that Ozzy has a never-before-seen mutation in a gene responsible for breaking down alcohol, which allows his body to break it down much faster than normal. Scientists say that this gene, quote, might help explain why his liver hasn't exploded. Ozzy said about the experiment, "The only gene I know is the one in Kiss." It's Gene Simmons. A statement which leads me to believe that he also has a mutation in the gene responsible for epic dad jokes. During the very same Van Halen tour that Ozzy snorted ants and licked puddles of piss from more than one individuals, something a bit more serious happened to the godfather of metal. He was kidnapped. Sort of. It's 1978, and Van Halen, along with most of Black Sabbath, had just checked into a hotel in Atlanta. Many hours later, they started to prepare for that night's show when they noticed that Ozzy's room was missing something kind of important. Ozzy Osbourne. It was missing Ozzy Osbourne. His luggage had been dropped off but not opened, his bed was still made, and there was no Ozzy to be found. Not even any traces of him that you could find with a blacklight, which means he was definitely never in there. They alerted the police, and the news quickly made it to local TV and news stations in Atlanta. The hours went on and the police kept searching, but Ozzy was still MIA. Eventually, Van Halen had to go on stage and perform as the opening act for a band still missing their lead singer. So then Van Halen wraps up their set. Still no Ozzy. After Van Halen got off, the remaining non-kidnapped members of Black Sabbath had to get on stage, alert everyone that Ozzy Osbourne is missing, and apologize for canceling the show. The whole rest of the night, the band, the police, fans in the audience, and the concerned citizens of Atlanta searched high and low for the Prince of Darkness, but he was still nowhere to be found. The next morning, 9 a.m. rolls around, and the band gets an unexpected call from the kidnapper himself. It was Ozzy asking what time they were going to perform at the show that night. The show that they performed last night. The man had kidnapped himself. What happened was, Ozzy came to the hotel the morning of the show in a drunken stupor, went into a completely random room that was not his, immediately blacked out, and slept for more than 24 hours. Mad lad. And now a quick lightning round on some of his other mad lad behavior. Ozzy was once riding in an aerial tramway, which is like a ski lift that takes you up the mountain, but instead of a bench, it's like a whole box with windows in it. You can go inside. Here, take a look. The tram stopped for a couple of minutes at an elevation of 1,000 feet, and Ozzy felt that it was a good idea to climb on top of it through a hatch in the roof and ride it like a surfboard the rest of the way up the mountain. Mad lad. Ozzy was once invited to a White House dinner by George W. Bush.
What a fantastic audience we had tonight. Washington power brokers, celebrities, Hollywood stars, Ozzy Osbourne.
He got royally shit-faced, and after he started screaming in front of 1,800 people, George Bush could audibly be heard saying, "This might have been a mistake. Mad lad." When anyone would stay at Ozzy's Outland cottage in England, he would sneak into their rooms and shave off their eyebrows. And that one just proves this man is pure evil. Mad lad! After getting ferociously drunk on a trip to Germany, Ozzy earned the prestigious title of being the only person ever to be thrown out of the Dachau concentration camp. Traditionally, people are, of course, thrown in. Mad lad. Mad lad. And just like the caveman said when he found out that natural emissions of electricity were no longer going to be spherical, lightning round over. Mad lad! In 1981, Ozzy was apparently let back into Germany because he was sitting down to dinner with a record executive at a restaurant in that very country. After he got drunk, which at this point we can assume that if Ozzy is awake, he is drunk. So after he proceeded to get much more drunk than his average level of drunk, which is already quite drunk, he hopped on the table and started to sensually striptease the record executive. Just hit the old "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" right there in front of everyone. After stripping stark naked, he kissed the record exec on the lips, put his balls into his wine, just dunked his dirty danglers right in there, and then peed in the glass. And I really wish that I was there because that created the perfect opportunity for a classic "I'll have what he's having."
I will have whatever he is having.
Surprisingly enough, this is not the worst thing that Ozzy ever did at a table with record executives. He really did not like those fellas. And of course, he was legitimately insane.
Roll rodents.
The same year, 1981, Ozzy went to his record label's annual sales meeting to try and make nice with them. Why? Who knows? You know, it's not like he's engaging in anything weird with record executives, right? I mean, no, he'd never do that. And this incident ended up having just the exact polar opposite effect of what he was going for there. You see, Ozzy had been kicked out of Black Sabbath 2 years prior and was having kind of a rough time, to say the least. Just like the band that kicked him out, Ozzy's label was getting pretty goddamn fed up with working with a drug-addicted, alcoholic, crazy person, and Ozzy was supposed to go in there and show them that he might possibly, just maybe, not be just that. And just, that is just so not what happened. So the plan was for Ozzy to show up, give a quick speech, and then release 3 live dubs from his jacket pocket as a sign of peace and good faith. But on the day of, Ozzy showed up to the meeting. Well, can you guess how he showed up to the meeting? Sober? No. Have you been listening? No. He was incredibly fucked up, even by his standards, apparently. He was literally intermittently blacking out throughout the entire meeting. So during a speech from a publicist that Ozzy felt was particularly boring, he decided he fancied a snack, pulled out one of the doves from his jacket pocket, bit its head off with his bare teeth, and then spit out the decapitated dove head onto the table. Just nonchalantly. Nothing to see here, nothing unusual going on here.
You bit the head off was it a pigeon?
Well, it's my hobby, you know.
Now explain that one.
Your neck.
No, the pigeon or the dove or whatever it was.
Well, I was kind of peckish when they had the CBS convention.
Uh-huh.
This iced tea is great. Excuse me.
Certainly, sir.
And there was a pigeon there, so I thought, well, nothing else, bite the pigeon. I mean, the pigeon didn't mind, man, because he had no choice, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like a bag of pistachios. Man, the guy is peckish. Leave him alone. Peckish. Because it's a bird. Surprisingly, they didn't immediately kick him out of the meeting, fire him, ban him from the music industry forever, and attempt to perform an exorcism, but Ozzy was still hungry. After he bit the head off of the second dove, that's when the stuffed shirts had had enough. They swiftly kicked him out of the building. But, if you recall, there were 3 doves. He still got one in the chamber, locked and loaded. As Ozzy walked away, he ran into his bassist, who noticed that Ozzy's jacket was flapping strangely, almost like what a terrified bird trapped in the jacket pocket of the man who just orally decapitated its brother and sister in front of its very eyes might look like. The bassist asked, "What the hell is that?" To which Ozzy responded by, once again, ripping the head off of the third dove with his mouth and spitting it on the ground. A prince among men indeed. He's a spokesman for PETA now. That's real. You can look that up. The tales of the hungry PETA spokesperson / bird decapitator are not done yet, though. Ozzy still was not quite full. But this time, his avian appetizer was a bit more nocturnal. That's right, folks. It's the big one. A year after this dove incident, Ozzy still had a hankering for some head. And not that kind, not that. Get your brain out of the gutter, you dirty little brain gutter haver. Gosh, golly, dirty. Filthy. So by this time in his solo career, Ozzy was pretty much just operating on his own discretion. No other bandmates to rein him in, and clearly he can do whatever he wants as far as the record label is concerned, e.g. him not being fired after the prior dove decapitation. So he could really just do whatever the fuck he wanted to do. And this led to some pretty interesting artistic choices. By the time 1982 had begun, Ozzy was doing this quirky little thing for more than a year, where at some point in the show, he would hurl raw meat and other animal parts wildly into the crowd. And hey man, at least it's not his own shit. Best guy so far. And I've gotten a decent amount of comments on the other 2 videos about people saying that they've saw this and that show, Van Halen show in 1985 or whatever. So I have a question for y'all. Leave it in the comments. Have you ever been to an Ozzy Osbourne concert and had raw meat hurled on you? Please let me know. Also subscribe. Fucking subscribe. Also human feces. If you've been to an Iggy Pop or, God forbid, a G.G. Allin concert, God, let me know. Anyway, the crowds grew to expect this little stunt from Ozzy, and in response, they would hurl whatever gross nonsense they could sneak past concert security toward him onto the stage. Ozzy says, "They'd throw back sheep testicles, live snakes, dead rats, all kinds of things. Somebody once threw a live frog onto the stage. It was the biggest frog I'd ever seen, and it landed on its back. One individual who was happily hucking animals that night was 17-year-old Mark Neal. 2 weeks prior, his little brother had managed to somehow wrangle a live bat into their house, where it died shortly after. Rest in peace, Bat Damon. So the pair now had a dead bat on their hands, and what better place to dispose of a 2-week-old nearly rancid bat carcass than an Ozzy Osbourne concert? Nowhere. Nowhere. These two hooligans snuck the dead bat into the concert and then at some point hucked it on stage in front of the bass guitarist, who then pointed it out to the Ozman. Without missing a beat, Ozzy swooped over, picked up the dead rancid bat, plopped it in its mouth, and bit off its head.
Evidently threw an unconscious bat on the stage, and he thought it was a rubber bat, whatever, and he picked it up and bit the head off.
And Sharon's going, "Dummy, it's real." I'm like, what?
Ozzy says he thought it was a toy bat made out of rubber, but I'm honestly calling fibber on that one. He is fibbing it up hardcore. He just says that so he can keep running PETA and selling his NFTs.
Ozzy wanted a Bored Ape for his birthday, but I told him the floor was just too high. And with crypto winter just around the corner, it wasn't a good idea.
There's also an Ozzy branded bat toy in which you can decapitate it. It's got a little Velcro on the head. It's kind of cute. It's kind of cute. And yeah, I don't believe him, because he was already used to people throwing live frogs and dead rats and sheep nuts on stage. None of those were toys, okay? No one at an Ozzy Osbourne show is gonna be throwing toys, okay? They're going sheep balls to the wall. But to be fair, this was the height of Ozzy's heroic level of drug abuse, and I don't think that he knew where or who he was, let alone to be able to distinguish between rubber and non-rubber objects. He probably thought that the crowd was made of Play-Doh when he was singing into a pizza pie. But I really just think he made up the rubber bat story because he got invited to so many interviews afterwards and had to constantly think of an answer to the question, why did you bite the head off of a bat during a live performance, other than, well, I was incredibly fucked up and honestly it looked kinda tasty.
We're talking with the one and only Ozzy Osbourne. Good evening, Ozzy.
What?
You don't look like a madman.
Look in the shoe I am.
You are a madman.
I'm gotta be mad, yeah. You get all these crazy people that come and throw this junk on stage, and you know. I thought it was one of these rubber bats. I pictured it, it was a real bat. You know?
Was it alive?
Well, it was till I bit the head off it, you know.
Let's tell him what you did. Bit the head off a bat. There, I said it.
It wasn't Batman, it was like a bat. Colonel Saunders, how many chickens did he put to death? He didn't bite the heads up, but everybody else did. I mean, the taste of bats is very salty. It tastes of salt.
Tastes like anything else?
Well, yes, but I can't really say that on the air, can I, really?
No. Next.
Now, did you know immediately, not having bitten into...
Well, I've eaten some pretty rough chicken on the road, you know. But...
What kind of a kid were you?
Well, I wanted to be a brain surgeon originally.
So Ozzy chomps down on the supposed toy bat and very quickly finds out that it is in fact not made of rubber, but made of regret. He recalls about the incident. Immediately, something felt wrong. Very wrong. For a start, my mouth was instantly full of this warm, gloopy, Oh, that's fucking gross. For a start, my mouth was instantly full of this warm, gloopy liquid with the worst aftertaste you could ever imagine. I could feel it staining my teeth and running down my chin. Then the head in my mouth twitched. Ah, gross. Ew. Gross, ew, gross, no. So now Ozzy's standing there with a mouth full of bat gloop and suddenly decides that this might not have been the smartest idea. He is immediately rushed to the hospital where he had to get numerous tests, blood work, and a rabies shot in both butt cheeks every day for quite some time.
But I can assure you the rabies shots that I went through afterwards aren't fun.
No, they're painful, I understand.
Very painful.
Now, biting the heads off of doves in the privacy of a boardroom is one thing, but biting the head off of a rancid bat live in concert in front of thousands of people is, kind of a bigger deal. This act would end up being the one he's most famous for, and would send Christian groups and Karens all over the world into the satanic panic of the 80s, and prove that Ozzy, just like every other rock star, was legitimately insane. And quickly, subscribe. Do it now. Subscribe now. Support me on Patreon, link in the description. Like this video, and if you're in for more craziness, check out this next one. Okie dokie, yay!